Welcome to RCC's Math Tape 052, Adding Rational Numbers. As you view the tape, be sure to take very careful notes. When you find something you don't understand, or any problem that you miss in the exercises that I shall give you, be sure to mark that on your paper so that you can ask an instructor or a tutor when you go to the lab. Our sole objective on this tape is to add rational numbers. Let's begin first by adding numbers on the number line. The procedure will follow. I shall illustrate with a very simple example. Let's add 3 plus 4. Start at 0. Draw an arrow to represent 3. At the tip of the arrow, draw another arrow to represent 4. Finally, read the answer below the tip of the last arrow. So here's our procedure. Start at 0, draw an arrow to represent 3. At the tip of the arrow, draw another arrow to represent 4. Finally, read the answer below the tip of the last arrow. So let's see this example with the number line. We start at 0, draw an arrow to represent 3. Notice that this arrow goes to the right because 3 is a positive number and we count positive numbers to the right. At the tip of that arrow, we draw the second arrow to represent 4, and then read the answer 7 below the last arrow. For a slightly less familiar example, we'll add 3 plus negative 4. Negative 3 plus negative 4. Notice that we start at 0 and count 3 in the negative direction. Because negative numbers are read to the left, we draw an arrow to the left from 0. Then, pick up at that arrow, draw the second arrow for negative 4, and the answer, negative 7, lies below the end of the second arrow. Next example, add 3 plus negative 4. We begin at 0. Draw 3 to the right, and then pick up at the end of that arrow, draw negative 4 to the left. The answer, negative 1, lies below the end of the second arrow. So 3 plus negative 4 gives us negative 1. One more example. We add negative 3 plus 4. Starting at 0, we go to negative 3, then pick up there and go 4 to the right. The answer, 1, lies below the tip of the last arrow. Now I've gone through these rather quickly, so let's look at a summary. The summary is 3 plus 4 is 7. Negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. And negative 3 plus 4 is 1. Notice that when you add these combinations, one of two things happens. Either the two numbers are being drawn in the same direction, which means they add their results. Negative 3 plus negative 4, they're both going in the negative direction. Their results are combined to give you negative 7. The answer ends up going in the same direction that the two numbers were headed to begin with. Or, in the case where they're going in opposite directions, 3 plus negative 4, we went 3 to the right and then 4 back to the left, landing at negative 1. And negative 3 plus 4, we went 3 to the left and 4 to the right, landing at 1. In these two examples, the two numbers are going in different directions and their results are subtracted. That is, we subtract the absolute values to get the size of the number that's our result, and the one that dominates, the one that has the greater absolute value, is the one whose sign stays with the answer. This leads us to the addition rules. Anytime we have something called rules, it's very, very important for you to write this down in your notes. So here are the two addition rules. Let me adjust them so we can see them clearly. First rule, to add two numbers with the same sign, add their absolute values and attach the same sign. To add two numbers with the same sign, add their absolute values and attach the same sign. The second rule, to add two numbers with different signs, subtract their absolute values and attach the sign of the number whose absolute value is greater. To add two numbers with different signs, subtract their absolute values and attach the sign of the number whose absolute value is greater. Let's look at some examples. Let's start with -6 plus -4. Notice that these two numbers have the same sign. They're both negative. That means they're headed in the same direction on the number line. You can think of it as they're joining forces. -6 and then -4 goes in the same direction. They go in the same direction. That means we add their absolute values. If we add the absolute value of -6 and the absolute value of -4, we get 6 plus 4, which is 10. And the absolute value is 10. The sign is the same sign they have. That is -10. -6 plus -4 is -10. Next example, -12 plus 25. Notice that these two numbers have opposite signs. That means we must subtract their absolute values. The difference between 12 and 25 is 13. And the sign of the greater in absolute value is positive. That means the answer is positive 13. Add 1/3 and 7/12. These two numbers have the same sign. That means we will add their absolute values. Recall that to add fractions, we must find a common denominator. The common denominator for 3 and 12 is 12. Most people prefer to write the numbers vertically, 1/3 and 7/12, one below the other. Common denominator of 12. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 4 times 1 is 4. 12 goes into 12 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. That gives us 4 12s and 7 12s. We add those and get 11 12s. So 1/3 plus 7 12s is 11 12s.